Alex. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Kano. I was told I had 7 minutes. I do. A little red clock tells me here that I do. So I'll try and keep it quick. What's Kano? Put simply, it's a computer company. It's computers you make and code yourself, like Lego. The title of my presentation, Backwards and Forwards, bringing back progress in technology and society. Last few weeks and last few years, a lot of people casting questions on this notion of technology as the great emancipator, the great connector. It relates to what we're all talking about here today. We're at a really interesting and somewhat free-for-all moment for computing. Maybe the last time the form factors and interactions and participation in computing was this open was the early 80s, when people were taking little chipsets, plugging them into phones, plugging them into TVs, a Cambrian explosion, making them do new and interesting things. It took one company to come onto the scene at that time and say, this isn't just for hackers. It isn't just for people with the skills. It isn't just for those in the know. Anyone can use a computer. That was very controversial at the time. Kano's purpose is to make it as simple and fun for anyone to understand and influence computing. We've been doing it for 4 years. We sell computer encoding kits and software for all ages, all over the world, 86 countries so far. And I'm going to talk about that moment then, this moment now, how we interact with it, and hopefully how we all can. A little bit of background just on why I'm here talking about this. I am the co-founder and CEO of the company. I never really expected to be doing something like this, as those who knew me in an earlier life might have guessed. I was always hung up and stuck on this question. You know, I'm sure many of you are as well. What do you want to be when you grow up? I had fits and starts in all sorts of areas. This Kano kid in front is talking as I talk. Don't let it distract you. It responds to sound. It responds to data. This is a $79 kit. We have the computer kit, for which we're well known, on the table there. The first build and code your own computer for all ages. Lets you make art, games, music, and more. We sell a whole system, not only of software, but of kits. For instance, here's a creation from a kid in our community, flowing particles across a screen. Simple loop does that. You plug in our tilt sensor kit. It all talks the same language. And the particles start to flow with the rotation of the kit. So we're looking to combine the arts and sciences to demystify computing in an age where really only 1% of people have any way in. My way into this was weird. Segue, back to the presentation. I tried to be an actor, as you're probably already discerning. I have very little stage presence, so that didn't really work. When I was much younger, growing up in the halcyon era of the Microsoft explosion in Seattle, I was at this kind of geeky school, 20 people, middle school, where the only sport was ultimate frisbee, and we all played Magic the Gathering on the weekends because that was the only thing to do. I started to get into this visual programming language called processing and started to make these little animations. As you can see, that didn't really work out because this really doesn't go anywhere. It just goes back and forth and back and forth. But it was a moment when, at least learning this at a young age and realizing my limitations, kind of at least incepted some of the ideas that led to Kano. Ended up in journalism, trying to demystify and open up some other areas of society that were far too closed, still are far too closed at the time. I remember being embedded at Occupy Wall Street, watching the protesters in Zuccotti Park. This was for New York Magazine, railing against the big banks, railing against the hedge funds, railing against the asset managers, then taking out their smartphones and logging into Facebook and sharing hashtag Occupy everywhere. And I remember thinking at the time, this is 2012, big tech is next, right? Never has so much of the world's flow of information and content and meaning been controlled by so few. And maybe that's what's happening now. That didn't work out because the journalism industry collapsed, as many of you might be aware. I wish they'd asked Mark Zuckerberg how many human moderators he employs at the company. A lot of former journalists who lost their jobs, as I basically did when Newsweek shut its print magazine, could be put to good use there. Saw the movie The Matrix at age 10. It was kind of a religious experience for me, this notion that there's like a hidden world behind our everyday reality, and if you manage to discern the rules, you can bend them, you can learn kung fu, you can get the girl, become a hero. And that's really not too dissimilar from the world we're living in now. You know, more than 20 billion machines, most of them slapped to our thighs all day long, extraordinary power, extraordinary potential, and yet only a tiny subsection of society able to access and understand it. So Kano is a computer company that seeks to address this huge gap, not just teaching kids to code, but giving people an understanding of the dynamics of reality that lie below the surface to make them better citizens as well as better learners or creators. So where did this all begin? A challenge. Left journalism, kind of washed out, ended up in grad school. What do you do when you're not really succeeding at anything? You try and become an academic, I guess. And I met the inventor of this little board. Who's heard of the Raspberry Pi? Yeah, of course. So at the time, I got to know the inventor, Eben Upton. That's not the inventor. That's my little cousin, Mika, who was 6 at the time. They had created this little brain, this little naked circuit board, and it was catching fire among the maker community, the developer community. People were sending it into space. People were sending it under the ocean. It was like a renaissance of making with technology. However, it was inaccessible. The inventor, Eben, shared with me the frustration and challenge putting these pies into schools and finding them gathering dust on a shelf a month later. No resources, no interest from kids, despite all the things you could do. Long story short, got excited about this board myself, showed it to my little cousin Mika, and he made this challenge. Could I build my own computer with this, he asked. Not a robot, not a Bitcoin miner, not a Beowulf cluster. Could I build my own computer? And can it be as simple and fun as Lego, so no one teaches me how to do it? That led to the creation of the first kit. He teamed up with some misfits, some wild people, an artist from the north of Sweden, from a town called Westeros, for any of the Game of Thrones fans. He illustrated this comic book style instruction manual that would take you through the building, teamed up with a dude from the PlayStation 4 team to work on an open source operating system that would take you into Minecraft, into Pong, into Snake, show you how to hack it, to change it. And then we did this, 2013, our first Kickstarter campaign, set out to raise 100 grand in 30 days, raised $1.5 million in 30 days, became the fastest crowdfunding campaign in the UK and Europe and the most crowdfunded edtech product of all time. And that was where we first used this phrase, 99% of the world is designed by and for a tech literate 1% of 1%. Since then, we shipped over 330,000 kits to 86 countries, not just the computer kit that you've seen in the Pixel kit, but kits that let you build and code cameras and speakers and sensors, that let you remix music with simple JavaScript, simple Python, and share your creations with others. We went into mass retail last year. You can find us in 4,500 retail doors, every Target, every Best Buy, now almost every Walmart, with this whole range. As you can see, this is an early version of the point of sale, which is why it simply says, most awarded kids coding thing ever, which is also true, but I shouldn't brag. So yeah, full range of kits, camera, pixel, speaker, full range of sensors. You can plug them into any device. Our software runs cross-platform. And a community on top where all the code that is shared is open source. Kids come in, they remix. Wired described this as kind of like a kid's GitHub. They make and say things that I promise are more eloquent than OMG, OMG, how did you make it? Cool. So again, this is the gap we're trying to solve. More than 20 billion connected devices. Less than 50 million people can influence them. A lot of them live in that city with that beautiful bridge. I thought this lyric from the Flaming Lips, has anyone heard the song Yoshimi Battles the Pink Robots? Great, so people nodding, fantastic. I was listening to that, yeah, a guy in the back. I was listening to that song as Mark Zuckerberg was being grilled last week, and I was looking at our Twitter feed, a person building and coding the Kano computer for the first time, a young girl. You know, we really are at a pivotal moment for technology when people are starting to realize it's not this neutral, independent, bloodless thing. It's embedded in our values, embedded in how we organize our societies. It's about culture. It's about how we communicate. Speaking of hoping that the evil robots don't win, how many of you, like me, felt watching the hearings that, goodness me, somebody get these lawmakers a Kano kit or a Tinker subscription or Scratch or Raspberry Pi. These, you know, or just get them a good aide, like, you know, someone to work with them. Look at these comments. If I'm sending an email in WhatsApp, does that ever inform your advertisers? Is it ever really gone from the cloud or wherever? Oh yeah, we've done one hearing on the algorithms, and that was the chair of the Communications and Technology Subcommittee. So it's not just about coding. It's not just about getting a job as an engineer. It's about understanding the way the world works and making it do something new. Why is that? If you're under 35, here's a stat that shocked me, and I'm going to get through it really quickly. Here's a stat that shocked me when I heard it, but when I tell people, they don't look shocked, so maybe it's not that shocking. If you're under 35, on average, you spend a third of your waking hours looking at a smartphone screen. And what the British Journal of Psychology found as well, which stunned me, is that half of that smartphone usage is unconscious. People wouldn't report it themselves. And you know how it goes. You go into a notification, you get lost in it. And that's because these secretive sealed screens are designed in that way, from the ground up. We seem to be starting to accept this equivalence. And yet, if you go into the Valley and look at product design textbooks, this was recommended to me over and over again when we started working on the Kano computer kit. Nir Eyal, Hooked, How to Build Habit-Forming Products. Look at the mouse cursor in the dopamine center of the brain. If we accept this equivalence between how we organize society and how we design technology, maybe we should be designing for more than commoditizing attention and addiction. So that's what our company's about. Our goal is to demystify the modern world, make its creative power accessible to all. We want to bring back that spirit of the early 80s, not just the one screen to rule them all, but infinite possibility and form factors. People use Kano in 86 countries to build time-lapse cameras, to build their own server arrays, their own blockchain applications. We're going from computers anyone can use to computers anyone can make. And the idea is to bring back democratic progress. We ended up on the top 10 most innovative companies in consumer electronics, trailing behind some of those giants of sealed sapphire screens, those giants that will spend $100 million to design a photo filter that will make your face look like a fox. Consider what that R&D spend could have gone to instead. That's another brag, subtly. This is our first book. This was our first assembly line. We hand-folded the kits in a little flat in North London. And as I say, people have done incredible things with them. We've had this guy who we all miss build the Kano computer kit in the, not all of us, I shouldn't assume, build the Kano computer in the White House. We had Theresa May take it to Bangalore. On the other end of the spectrum, we had Carly Kloss, smartphone celebrity, build and code the Kano computer herself. Steve Wozniak, creative computing OG, longtime customer, has backed us over multiple campaigns. We're in multiple countries, partnerships with the US government, Department of Housing and Urban Development, the Argentinian Ministry of Education. We've translated the content. I'm getting over my time now, so I'll speed right to the end. Team of 75 of us. We represent 25 nationalities between London, Massachusetts, and Shenzhen. We do a lot of this ourselves, thousands of pages of content, beautifully designed products, 50 million lines of open code shared by you. Check out Kano World to see what people are making with these kits and with our software right now. And I will leave you with one image. If Yoshimi and the Pink Robots was too dark and dystopian, we received an email from David's mum a few months ago saying, hey, no problems here, but could you send me a Kano kit box? And we asked, well, why do you want just the box? Are you having a problem with the box? And said, no, well, David loved making his computer so much, he sleeps with the kit in bed at night. So we'd love to give him a box just so he doesn't ruin his main kit. So it just goes to show this generation is bringing back progress. They are opening up these realms that were once closed. They're doing it with tools, not just Kano's, others as well. I love this song. Thank you for it, and thanks for listening.